Ben,
Jacob,
how you doing?
good. How are you?
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
We are on chapter 8, and I believe it's my turn to read.
It is your turn. Yeah, we were talking about zrizut, zeal.
Zrizut, correct. Bederech kniat hazrizut, the way to acquire zeal. Hine ha'emtzaim, let me get rid of this. Ha'emtzaim asher nikna ba hazrizut, the ways through which you can acquire zeal. Hem otam asher nikna bam hazehirut. They are exactly the same as the ones by which you get watchfulness. U madragotehem kemadragahem, and their degrees or levels are similar to those. Ukomo shekatavti lamala, like I explained above. Ki inyanam karov ze laze me'od, because they are very close, similar together. Ve'ein hefresh beinehem, ela sheze ba'asi ve'ze be'lavin. That the only difference between them is that one refers to those things which we are obligated to do, and the other, those things which we are prohibited to do. וכאשר יתעמת אצל האדם גודל ערך המצוות, and when a person understands the great worth of the commandments, ורוב חובתו בהם, and how great is his obligation in that, ודאי שיתעורר ליבו אל העבודה, it's clear that his heart will awaken to this service. ולא יתרפא ממנה, and he will be lax in it. Wow, I translated itrapem mimena exactly the same way they did.
Lax in it, yeah. I was actually, can you scroll up for a second?
Yeah.
We're already looking at so when a man comes to, what did they say? When a man comes to realize as truth the great value of the mitzvot, and what does it say in Hebrew? Realize godel erech hamitzvot. Okay, I was just check something. Okay, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
ואומנם, however, מה שיוכל להגביר התעוררות הזה, what can overpower this awakening, הוא ההסתכלות ברוב הטובות, is to look into the great goodness שהקדוש ברוך הוא עושה עם האדם, that the blessed one, the Holy One, blessed be He, does with man, b'chol et u'chol sha'ah, in each moment and each minute or hour, v'haniflaot hagadolot she'oseh imo, and the great wonders that He does with him, me'et haleda ad hayom ha'acharon, from the minute he is born to the last day. Ki kol ma sheyarbe lehistakel ve'litlobonen b'dvarim ele. However more a person thinks about and meditates upon these things, hine yarbe la'akir la'atzmo chova rabba el ha'el hametiv lo. That way he causes a greater recognition in himself of the great obligation that he has towards the power that does good to him.
It's interesting. It reminds me of the book that we read, like the Tomer Dvorah, about forgiveness, and he talks about, I think it was the first attribute, even it talks about the Melech Ne'elav.
Yeah.
Recognizing, the sheer magnitude of the kindness that he gives away, and using that as inspiration for seeing in others, right? The kindness that they if there is something, a vestige of kindness, something small that they do for us, maybe in that merit, to give them something. But it kind of reminds me of that.
Yep, I agree. ויהיו אלה אמצעים לשלו יתעצל ויתרפא בעבודתו, and these would be the methods through which he would not be lazy, you lazy bum, and to be lax in his service. Ki hare ho'il ve'eno yachol vadai legmol lo tovato yitbarach. Since it's not possible that a person would do anything good for God, um, uh, who is blessed, lepachot yodel lishmo v'yikim mitzvotav. At the very least, he should thank his name and keep his commandments.
Mhm.
Vehine. Ein lacha adam be'eza matzav sheyimatzeh. It's not possible for a person to be in a situation. Im ani ve'im ashir, whether he is poor or he is wealthy. Im bari ve'im choleh, whether he is healthy or he is sick. Shelo yir'eh niflaot v'tovot rabot b'matzavo, who does not see great wonders in his situation. Ki ha'ashir v'habari kvar hu chayav lo yitbarach al oshro ve'al brioto. So if a person be wealthy and healthy, he already has to is obligated to God for his health and his wealth.
Mhm.
Ha'ani chayav lo she'afilu be'onyo, and a poor person, he still is obligated that even in his poverty, mamtzi lo parnasato derech nes vafele ve'eino maniho lamut bera'av, that still this person has, through miracles and wonders, is in fact receiving his sustenance, and that God does not leave him to starve in a of hunger.
So how does this? So makes me think of, like, pessimistically, you can say it can always get worse. So at
Right.
least,
Look, as long as you're not dead, right? You may be poor. So I'll tell you the famous story of Reb Zusha of Anipoli.
right.
So a man goes to the Maggid of Mizrich, and he says to the Maggid, the great Maggid, who is the student of the Baal Shem Tov, that he doesn't know how to be joyfully accepting of the bad things that happens in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Maggid tells him, go to my student Reb Zusha of Anipoli. Go to Reb Zusha. So this man goes to visit Reb Zusha in Anipoli, and Reb Zusha was known to be a very poor man, and his wife was known to be quite critical of him, and he had many children who would be crying and have, all kinds of needs. And being so poor, he lived in a shack, and they had old clothing. And the way I remember the story, like, the guy goes and visits, and it's raining, and there's holes in the roof, and there's water coming down all over the place, and the wife is screaming, and the kids are screaming, and it's not a peaceful place he sees. But so he goes to Reb Zusha, and he says, Reb Zusha, the Maggid of Mizrich told me that I should come to you, and you would be able to teach me how to accept all my hardships with happiness and gratefulness towards God. And Reb Zusha says, the Maggid said that. So, yeah. Well, I wouldn't know. I've never had any hardships.
I never lacked anything in my life.
I never lacked anything in my life. Exactly.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
I have another. So how does this also connect, and how true it is that if even if you're poor, you're still in a sense obligated, or it's recommended that you give tzedakah.
You have to.
You
Yeah,
have to give charity, right?
correct. So, I mean,
It's, I mean, it's counterintuitive. So I'm posing it as a question, right? Isn't it counterintuitive? Because you would think if somebody's poor, at least let them, like, whatever they get, let them keep it so they can build themselves a little bit, maybe.
but so this is actually the funny thing is psychologically, like the people who have nothing, right? Even what people need more than anything is, in fact, to be needed, right?
Yeah, I actually, right.
And to be productive and to
Mhm.
contribute, right?
Mm.
And if you don't give people an opportunity to contribute, and they only take and take and take, first of all, you're not doing them a kindness at all. But generally, I mean, so the question becomes, what is charity, right? Like,
Mhm.
what is poverty? Do I, if uh famously the Talmud and then the Shulchan Aruch talks about, if a person was very wealthy and he becomes poor, what level of um, what level of lifestyle do you need to afford
Mhm.
him so that he's not considered poor anymore?
Right.
And the um I, I forget the precise thing. I think it was it's afilu eved lirkod lifnei suso, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Even a servant whose job it is to dance in front of his horse, right? So not everybody back then had horses, and certainly not everybody had a servant, and certainly not everybody had a servant whose only job it was to dance in front of as his horse goes along, right? But when a person is accustomed to a certain level um, of comfort, right?
Mhm.
It's for them to have less than that. It's considered, they're missing something, right? So what exactly does it mean in a very real sense? I mean, everyone is in this world is missing, in that we have to extend our hands out to get the food. We have to go walk all the way to the fridge, you know and
Yeah.
you order the Uber, and the food only comes to your door. You have to go to the door and get it, right?
Yeah.
So um yeah, I mean, that is a part of it. The fact is, Ezehu Ashir HaSameach B'Chalko, like it says in the Mishnah Avot, the sayings
Yeah.
of the fathers. Who is wealthy? The one who is content in what he has.
Right. It reminds me of, there's a few things that are imprinted in my mind from the rabbi that helped me do the bar mitzvah.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the sayings that Rabbi Nir,
Uh-huh.
um, the son of Rabbi Far, but Rabbi Nir, he said something that I always remember. He said that it is sometimes it's a bigger mitzvah to receive than to give.
That too.
So it kind of correlates, right? Like you think, okay, like this poor person, should I take, their food, like, or whatever they want to give me something, but obviously they're lacking. Why should I take it for them? Well,
They,
sometimes
they
allowing them to
they
give.
can also be lacking the opportunity to give.
Right. Yeah.
So the first time I met Eric Weinstein, and I keep on reminding him of this, I said to him, Eric, give people an opportunity to give.
Mm-hmm.
You have to give other people an opportunity to participate and people want to participate,
Right.
right? So I mean that's definitely a part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Weiter.
Right.
החולה על שמחזיקו בכובד חוליו ומחותיו ואינו מניחו לרדת שחת. And even the sick person, the Pope, he should live and be well. He's been in the hospital for 10 days, and there's plenty of people who are kind of like, you know, might as well give up the ghost. But even him, he has to recognize that even though he's in a very weak state and in pain, possibly, right? That God isn't letting him fall into the grave. And similarly, anybody else who's in similar position, until there is no such thing as a man who shouldn't recognize that he has an obligation towards his creator. In his looking at these great gifts which God gives him, that he's receiving from God, then obviously he will awaken to be zealous in his service, like I wrote about. Kol sheken im yitbonen hayot kol hatuv'o talui biyado yitbarach. How much more so when he recognizes and meditates upon the fact that all the good that happens to him is dependent on God's hand. Uma shemitzarech lo, and that he is necessary to him. Uma shemuchrach elav, and that he is an how do you say muchrach?
Yeah, I don't know, necessities, all of his needs and necessities.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mimeno yitbarach.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, that everything that he that he needs
essential to him.
Yeah. Velo macher, and does not come from somewhere else. Asher aken vaday shelo yit'atzel ma'avod avodato yitbarach. Obviously, then he wouldn't be so lazy to do his necessary service. Velo yachzar lo ma shehu mochrach alav. And similarly, he will not lack anything that he needs. Vehincha ro'eh שכללתי פה בדבריי שלושת המדרגות אשר חילקתי בזהירות. You'll notice that I put together in my words those three levels which I had separated when I was talking about watchfulness. Kikavar inyanam echad, because really they are one thing. V'hadavar lamed me'inyano, and it's something that can be learned out from its essence. Should lemei hadat, that to someone who has full understanding, tihiyeh hahera mitzad hachova umitzad erech hamaasim v'chashivotam. Of understanding, the wholeness of understanding will be roused to zeal by their sense of duty and by the great worth and importance of the deeds. Okay?
Right. Yeah, חובתו של אדם בעולם.
Yeah. Okay. La pachutim mehem, and to people who don't understand completely. Mitzad haolam haba uchvodo, right? They would understand it in terms of the world to come and its greatness. Shelo tasigehu busha leyom hagamul bir oto hatova shahaya yachol lahasig ibda. That he would not come to a day when he would be ashamed of the greatness that he was able to uh, merit, and he let it be destroyed. V'lehamon, and to the common people, mitzad haolam hazeh utzrahav, they would understand it from what is generally in this world and necessities. Ke inyan sheparashti sham lamala, like I explained above.
Right. Yeah. So we talked about how some people can be aroused to zeal or watchfulness, but just by reflecting on the goodness of God and their responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And others can either be aroused to it by feeling ashamed of what they could accomplish, or just because they want a better seat than the other guy in
Right.
the world to come.
So, I mean, the greatest is to actually have a desire to do God's will.
Right.
But less than that, you might have a person who has a wish to get into heaven, as it were.
Mhm.
And less than that, someone just merely realizing, this is how you live a good life. This is what's good for you today.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm going to keep on going.
I think so. I can go with this one.
You want to read?
Sure.
You read.
Okay. Let me get into position here. בביאור מפסידי הזריזות והרחקה מהם. Now we're going to clarify the things that push you away from zeal, זריזות. And והם אלה מפסידי הזריזות, הם מגדילי העצלה. What pulls you away from zeal is also what makes you more lazy.
Yeah.
והגדול שבכולם, and the biggest one of them all, הוא בקשת המנוחה הגופנית, בקשת המנוחה הגופנית.
Yeah, desiring bakashat hamenucha.
Right. So wanting to just physically, rest, needing a rest. ושנאת הטורח ואהבת העידונים בתשלום כל תנאיהם. And also hating working, and loving all the different delicacies and their myriads of their possibilities, I think is right.
Yeah, fullest extent.
כי הנה אדם כזה, because a person like we just described, ודאי שתכבד עליו עבודה לפני בוראו כובד גדול. Of course, when he thinks about the work that is set in front of him by his creator, it weighs very heavily on him. כי מי שירצה לאכול אכילותיו בכל היישוב והמנוחה, because whoever wants to just eat, have their food misubin, right? Have your food when you're just laying down or just sitting down and resting all the time. ולישון שנתו בלא תורד, and sleeping without being awoken for any reason. וימאן ללכת אם לא לאיתו, and walking really slowly because he doesn't want to be bothered. וכיוצא בדברים כאלה, and etc. הנה יוקשה עליו להשכים לבתי כנסיות בבוקר. It will be very hard for him to go to שחרית in the morning. early. או לקצר בסעודתו מפני תפילת המנחה בין הערביים. or to cut his meal short because you need to go to the afternoon prayer, מנחה, או לצאת לדבר המצווה אם לא היה עת ברור, or to go out and do a mitzvah if it's unclear if it's really the right time, or you're the one that's supposed to do it, or maybe somebody else will take care of it. כל שכן למהר עצמו לדברי מצווה או לתלמוד תורה. And overall, it will be very hard for him to be quick to do any kind of mitzvah or to study Torah.
Yeah, Ave.
ומי שמרגיל עצמו למנהגות האלה, and whoever habituates himself to these dealings or actions, איננו אדון בעצמו לעשות הפך זה כשירצה. Will not be, it would be...
He's not a master of himself.
He's not a master of himself, especially when it comes to reversing these horrible habits. כי כבר נאסר רצונו במאסר הרגל הנעשה טבע שני. Because his will is already captured by these habits that are like a second nature to him. ואומנם, צריך שידע האדם כי לא למנוחה הוא בעולם הזה. However, a person should know that this world is not for rest, אלא לעמל וטורח. It is for work and effort. ולא ינהג עצמו, אלא מנהג הפועלים העושים מלאכה אצל מזכיריהם. ולא ינהג עצמו, and you should not make yourself like the day workers that do their job.
He should make himself anything other than like a worker who...
Right, it's still confusing me when it says Ela. Usually in modern Hebrew it means so I still need to... Okay. Ela, he should be just like the workers that do the work for their masters or their employers. וכעניין מה שהיה אומר עירובין, and this is what our sages said in the Talmud, Agiri diyoma anan.
We are day laborers.
We are day laborers. כדרך יוצא הצבא okay, we are day laborers, okay. וכדרך יוצא הצבא במערכותיהם. And also like people who are going out to battle, אשר אכילתם בחיפזון, who are eating eat very fast, ושנתם ארעי, and they sleep whenever they can figure out when to sleep. ועומדים תמיד מוכנים לעת קרב, and they are always in attention, meaning they're always ready to start to fight.
Yeah.
ועל זה נאמר in Job, ועל זה נאמר, I got confused. על זה נאמר באיוב, and it was said in Job, כי אדם לעמל יולד. Because to foretoil a person is born. וכשירגיל עצמו על זה הדרך, and when one habituates himself to this way, ימצא עבודה קלה עליו ודאי. He will see that the work is actually feels lighter on him. כיוון שלא יחסר בעצמו ההזמנה וההכנה אליה. Because כיוון שלא יחסר בעצמו ההזמנה וההכנה אליה. How do we translate this?
So that he won't here. When a man habituates himself in this manner, he will certainly find the service of God easy, since he does not lack the preparation and readiness for it. Lack of preparation.
Okay, yeah. So which is kind of like part of zeal, right? You're preparing, you're motivated, you're looking forward to it. Okay. וזה הדרך אמרו זיכרונם לברכה באבות, and this is what our sages said in אבות. כך היא דרכה של תורה. This is the way of Torah. פת במלח תאכל. Bread in salt you should eat, you will eat. ומים במשורה תשתה, and water in, I guess, a small vessel you will drink. ועל הארץ תישן, and on the ground you will sleep. שהוא כלל ההרחקה בתכלית מן המנוחות והעידונים. And this is a general principle when it comes to how do you say
comforts and pleasures.
comforts, removing yourself or staying away from comforts and pleasures. עוד ממפסידי הזריזות, another one of the things that cause us to be have less zeal, הוא רוב הפחד וגודל המורא מן הזמן ותולדותיו. It is the fear and our trepidation, anxiety from מן הזמן ותולדותיו, from
time passing and its what will be from it.
Yeah, right. From the time passing and what will be of it. That's interesting. Okay. כיפה מהירה מהקור או מהחום. Because sometimes you say, well, it's too cold or it's too warm or it's raining. I can't really walk to shul. I've had that. פעם מהפגעים. And sometimes there's a bump in the road. I don't know what the pga'im means. There's something that might hurt you. פעם מן החלאים. And maybe sometimes you don't feel well. פעם מן הרוח, and maybe sometimes it's really windy. וכן כל בעצם הזה. And whatever other things you can think of. הוא העניין שאמר שלמה עליו השלום במשלי. This is what King Solomon said in Proverbs. אמר עצל שחל בדרך ארי בין הרחובות. That's a funny one. The lazy one says there is a lion in the way. A lion is among the streets. Right. So that's a new excuse you can bring to your teacher, I guess.
The lion, yeah.
A lion ate my homework.
My cat is sleeping on my lap. I can't get up. How could I possibly get up if my cat is sleeping on my lap?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. וכבר, yeah, that's what I tell my wife when it's time to change. Baby, I'm like, what can I do? Should I interfere with the cat? Not really. וכבר גינו חכמים זיכרונם לברכה עמידה הזאת, ויחסוה אל החטאים. And our sages already גינו, rebuked.
Yeah.
Better word for this.
Yeah. How'd they put it? Yeah. Denigrated.
Oh, you froze. I froze.
Denigrated, they said.
Denigrated. Okay. Our sages denigrated this attribute, doing this, and they connected it to sinful actions. Umikram masi'am dechtiv. And in scripture, it says in Ishaya, which is Isaiah, I guess, right? פחדו בציון חטאים, אכזר רעדה חנפים, אכזר רעדה חנפים. Which means the sinners in Zion are afraid. Trembling has seized the flatterers. Who are the flatterers? The flatterers are people that
Chanefim.
Chanefim, but I wonder what were they flattering? Why are they so afraid?
Don't ask me, Nachas for girls.
Okay. We'll deal with that later. עד שאמר אחד מן הגדולים אל תלמידו בראותו אותו מתפחד, חטאה את. Okay, this is from the Talmud from Brachot. Yeah. One of the great sages, upon noticing his disciple afraid, said to him, "You are a sinner." Okay, so he was afraid about something. We don't know what. Oh. Okay. אלא על זה נאמר בתהילים, and this it was said about this in Psalms, בטח בהשם ועשה טוב, שוכן ארץ וראה אמונה. Trust in God and do good, dwell in the land and be nourished by faith. Yeah. כללו של דבר, so what is the principle here that we're talking about? צריך שישים האדם את עצמו, ארעי בעולם וקבוע בעבודה. A person should see himself as dwelling in this world temporarily and having work as...
to work.
Well, how did you say that?
Being set to work.
Being set to work. Setting times for work, or that right? This is something that you always will have to do. I don't know if my connection is bad.
Yeah, you're being bumpy.
I'm being bumpy. Okay. Apologies. יתרצה ויסתפק בכל ענייני העולם במה שמזדמן לו, ויקח מן הבא בידו. A person should feel fulfilled, satisfied with all material possessions that come in his way, on his way, and will take from whatever is in his hand. וירחוק מן המנוחה, and should be far from laziness or just resting all the time. וקרוב למלאכה ולעמל, and closer, feel closer to doing work and creative work. ויהיה נכון ליבו בטוח בהשם. And his heart should truly be trusting in God, ולא יירא מתולדות הזמן ופגעיו. And you should not be afraid of the time and what will happen, and it's too cold or it's too hot, or all those kind of things. Shema Tomar. Now you might say, הרי מצינו שחייבו חכמים בכל מקום, שישמור האדם את עצמו שמירה מעולה, ולא ישים את עצמו בסכנה, אפילו הוא צדיק ובעל מעשים. So you might say that the sages already told us that we should stay very far away from any danger. Even if we are fully righteous and we do lots of good deeds and we think we have merits. ואמרו בכתובות, and they said in the Talmud, הכל בידי שמיים, חוץ מצינים פחים. And they said in Ketubot, everything is in the hand of God except for
the small things.
The small things.
Except colds and heat strokes.
Interesting. צינים ופחים.
Okay.
ומקרא כתוב, and it also says in the Torah in דברים, which is Deuteronomy, ונשמרתם מאוד לנפשותיכם, נשמרתם מאוד לנפשותיכם, and
you shall guard your lives very much.
Thank you. הרי שאין להחליט הביטחון הזה על כל פנים, והתם אמרו ואפילו לדבר מצווה. הרי שאין להחליט הביטחון הזה.
Hence, one should not decide to trust in God in all situations. And in the Talmud Yerushalmi, they said, even when performing a mitzvah.
Right. Okay. So, interesting. I mean, yeah, so really trying to be careful and being biased to make sure that people recognize that they need to put effort in everything they do, even if they think, well, either I'm doing a good deed, so it should work no matter what, because it's like it's good. It should you should allow good to happen.
There's plenty of people. Okay, quickly I'll tell another story. The guy who hears on the radio that there's going to be a flood. He says, God will provide. And then they declare that they're evacuating his place. He says, God will provide. And then the firefighters come and knock on the door and say, okay, you have to leave. And he says, no, God will provide. And the water starts rising, and he sees his neighbors on a boat passing on a canoe passing by. They say, here, jump in. And he says, God will provide. And then the water rises, and he sees somebody on a boat going by. He says, God will provide. And he's finally on the roof, and a helicopter comes by and lowers a ladder. He says, God will provide. And finally, he drowns. And he goes up to heaven, and he says to God, God, what happened? I had trust in you that you would provide. And God says, who do you think made the radio? Who do you think sent the firefighters? Who do you think sent the canoe and the boat and the helicopter? You know?
So that reminds me of the reverse of that joke.
Yeah.
Which is a man is in his car and he's driving somewhere and he goes and he's looking. He needs to go to the hospital and he's in a rush and he's looking for a parking place and he can't see anything. It's New York. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And he calls out to God. He said, God, if you give me this parking spot, I will give away all my baseball cards. I will never do that. I will not watch soccer anymore. I will study Torah all the time. And then suddenly, right in front of the hospital, somebody leaves and a parking spot is right there.
Yeah.
Then he calls out to God again and tells God, never mind, I got it.
I thought you were going to tell this joke really quickly. A young man goes to meet his bride's father before he asked her to marry him, right? And the father says to him, okay, how are you going to take care of my daughter? And the guy says, I have trust that God will provide. He says, okay. And he goes into the kitchen and his wife says, so what's with the guy? And he says, there's good news and there's bad news. He says, what's the good news? What's the bad news? The bad news is he has no idea how he's going to provide. What's the good news? The good news is he thinks I'm God.
So that reminds me of the other joke.
Yeah.
That's kind of connected to American, but it's there's a rabbi in a congregation, and they're building a new building. There's a new bet midrash that they want to build out, and they're looking for funding, and it's financials are not so good.
Yeah.
So they're struggling. But then he has some kind of revelation at night, and then in the morning after he goes to the congregation and everybody's there, and he tells them, "I have good news and I have bad news."
Yeah.
The good news is that God revealed Himself to me and said, "You have all the money that you need to do your new midrash." The bad news is that it's in your pockets. Money's in your pockets, yeah. So something like that. But anyway.
Okay, if we're gonna finish this one, we better keep on going.
Okay, let's go.
Talk about zrizut. We're sitting here, we're telling jokes.
Well, they're connected. We're trying to really hammer in a point here.
Yeah. No.
Oh, that's me, right?
It is you. I thought you were waiting for me.
No. Okay, da. Ki yesh ira v'yesh ira. So you should know that there is fear and there is fear, right? There is awe and there is awe.
Yeah.
There yesh ira reuya v'yesh ira shota. Right? There is awe that is valid or even appreciated, and there's foolish kind of awe or fear. Yesh bitachon v'yesh holelut. There is faith or trust, and there is depravity or recklessness.
Recklessness there.
Ki ine hadon baruch hu, because we will see that God oseh et adam bal sechel nachon. God made man with an intellect, right? Usvara nechocha she'inag atzmo al derech tov, and made the intellect be able to help that person come up with correct ways of dealing in the world. וישמר מן הדברים המזיקים אשר נבראו לענש את הרשעים. And the same intellect will help the good people to avoid the bad things that were created in order to punish the wicked. ומי שירצה שלא ינהג עצמו בדרך החוכמה, and whoever doesn't want to be led or to lead himself in the way of wisdom, ויפקיר עצמו לסכנות, and will be reckless and will lead himself in ways of danger. הנה, אין זה ביטחון. This is not this is not trust, right? There's a difference between being brave and being foolish. אין זה ביטחון אלא הוללות. This is not trust, this is recklessness. והנה הוא חוטא במה שהוא נגד רצון הבורא יתברך שמו, שרוצה שישמור האדם את עצמו. And in this person sins and goes against the will of his creator, who wants man to keep himself away from danger, to guard himself. ונמצא, and we also find, שמלבד הסכנה המוטבעת בדבר אשר הוא עלול אליה, מפני חיסרון שמירתו. We find that in addition to the danger that is part of not guarding yourself, הנה עוד הוא מתחייב בנפשו בקום עשה בחטא אשר הוא חוטא, ונמצא החטא עצמו מביאו לעונש. This one is an interesting one. הנה עוד מתחייב בנפשו בקום עשה בחטא אשר הוא חוטא, ונמצא החטא עצמו מביאו לעונש.
He's actually causing there to be a punishment for him, right? Because we talk about chayav benafsho, right? Somebody who sets himself in a situation who he deserves his punishment, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that he put himself into that situation is the sin which creates the necessity for that punishment.
Right. So sometimes you walk on a path and you don't guard yourself, so you don't see that there is a puddle and you step in it and you get wet. Sometimes you walk in a dark alley when you shouldn't, and that is a punishment that you get, right? Or even something worse, right? You go to a bad place. Interesting. It's a good point. This Ramchal really thinks through things. ועולם השמירה הזאת, and however, this guarding, וזאת העירה מיוסדת על הנהגת החוכמה והשכל, היא הראויה. So, not however, there is a kind of guarding and a kind of awe and fear that is part and parcel of being wise and using your intellect. And this is the one that is valid. Shalea ne'emar, and on it was said in Proverbs, Arum ra'eh ra'eh. Ra'a.
Yes, the clever man sees the evil and escapes. Venistar upetayim avru v'ne'nashu.
Right. Right. So the fool will continue through and is punished. Right. Yeah. Ach ayra ashota hi. And now we will talk about the kind of, how did you ayra here? What's the right term? How did they translate it? I don't know.
I guess fear.
Fear. Yeah. Okay. The foolish fear is שיהיה האדם רוצה להוסיף שמירות על שמירות ויראה על יראה. The foolish man will add on top, guardrails and upon guardrails and will be more afraid and more afraid. ועושה משמרת למשמרתו באופן שיגיע מזה ביטול לתורה ולעבודה. And he will do so, he will guard himself so much and he will be so afraid that he won't even, he will push himself away from Torah and from מצוות.
Yeah.
והכלל להבחין בין שתי העירות. And so how do we separate or able to distinguish between these two fears? הוא מה שחלקו חכמים זיכרונה לברכה באמרה מפסחים. This is what our sages said in the Talmud. האחד שכיח הזיקה שאני.
Shane. So hecha, where?
Right.
Hecha means where. The shchich, so shin chaf het. This is one of them in Aramaic is to be found. In Hebrew, it means to be dark. Yeah, or to forget.
Right, forget.
Hezeka, harm. Shane, it's different.
So where harm is likely, it is different. Where harm is likely, it is different. So also what he's saying is basically if you look at it and you think that, well, in all probability, if I do this and I will get harmed, or maybe somebody else will get harmed, then it probably is not the kind of thing that I should do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, ultimately the question is, are you right or you're wrong in your fears?
Right. And this is for us, for their intellect to understand.
Yeah.
כי מקום שההזק מצוי ונודע, יש להישמר. Because in a place where ההזק, the danger, the harm is present and known, we should keep ourselves away from it. אך מקום שהן ההזק נודע, אין לירא. But a place that is not usually has any harm in it, we do not need to fear. This kind of reminds me of a lot of halachot where I was reading it. If, for example, you can't wear tefillin wherever if there's like a place that has defecation or anything that's like you don't want to have near tefillin, right? I was thinking about like a cat litter box or whatever like that.
Yeah,
it's right in the open. So if it's expected that if you're in a room that's expected to have some kind of defecation, so obviously you don't want to be in this room. But if you're wearing tefillin, and suddenly you find in a room some form of like defecation that you wouldn't have expected in that room, then it wasn't like you didn't do anything wrong because it wasn't supposed to be there. I think the same is like for Hanukkah candles. I think I read this in the Rambam. Like if you put it in a place that doesn't usually have wind and it blows away, you can light it again because like it wasn't expected. But if you did it where in a place that there was wind, then you did something bad or whatever.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. ועל כיוצא בזה נאמר, and on this Rashi commentating on Chulin on Talmud said Chulin, ראותה דלה חזינן לא מחזיקנן. ראותה דלה חזינן לא מחזיקנן. So whoever can see, we do not assume any defect without cause. Right. So again, so it's the same kind of principle.
Yeah.
Okay. ואין לו לחכם אלא מה שאין עברות. And the wise person, what he has to do is he can see, he can check, and if he doesn't see it, then right. That's his tool. הוא עצמו עניין הפסוק שהבנו למעלה. And this is also what was said in the verse that we gave above. ערום ראה רעה ונסתר. Arum, right? Like the wise person sees a bad thing and he shies away from it.
Yeah.
אינו מדבר אלא בנסתר מן הרעה, אשר רואה לא ממה שיוכל להיות שיהיה אפשרי שיבוא. This specifically talks about, I think this is what he's saying, this specifically talks about the bad thing that is visible for the person, not what could possibly happen in a probability of 1,000,000 whatever. Okay, I wasn't sure that I got this, but okay. והוא ממש עניין הפסוק שהזכרתי למעלה. And this is also what the other verse that we brought up before said, וחכמים זיכרונם לברכה פירשו העניין כמין חומר להראות עד היכן מגעת יראת ההבל להפריש האדם מן המעשה הטוב. Okay, so let's get some help.
So when he was talking about it, Amar Atzel Shachal Baderech, right? He sees a lion among the way, right? So what? There's no lion. He's seeing it himself.
Right. Yeah. Okay. ואמרו, 7 דברים אמר שלמה בעצל. They said that also 7 things that Solomon said, there are 7 things in a lazy person. 7 things regarding this lazy person. אמרו לעצל, הרי רבך בעיר, לך ולמד תורה ממנו. They said to the lazy person, your rabbi is in town, go study Torah. והוא משיב אותם, מתיירא אני מן הארי שבדרך. And he tells them, I'm afraid because there's a lion on the road, in the streets. רבך בתוך המדינה, they told him. They told him that his rabbi is in town, or in the country.
Neighborhood, yeah.
אומר להם, מתיירא אני שלא יערי בין הרחובות. He says that he's afraid because there might be a lion in one of the paths. אומרים לו, הרי הוא בתוך ביתך. They tell him, your rabbi is in your house. אומר להם, אם אני הולך אצלו, אני מוצא הפתח נעולה וכולי. Right? He tells them, right, and I'll try to walk into his room and it'll be locked, and I will need to look for the key, and I have to go to the neighbor that I don't like and ask him for a favor. Right. So, right, this is the lazy person.
Sorry, it wasn't moving, and then when I did it, it moved suddenly. Sorry. למדת.
למדת, שאין העירה גורמת שיתעצל, אל עצלה גורמת לו שיתיירא. So from here we learn that fear does not cause a person to be lazy. Laziness causes a person to fear. Interesting. That's an interesting point. Okay, so I don't know if I have anything on that, but it's just interesting. I need to sit on that for a second.
Yeah. Is he talking about depression and anxiety? Like, it's depression that causes anxiety, not anxiety that causes depression?
Right, and is it the perception somebody's will hear? It's not only that we're thinking, okay, what is really the cause? It's the person assuming that the cause is fear, which is supposedly good, and then he's saying, okay, I should not do this. But if he knew that it was really his laziness, then he wouldn't assume that it was good, right? So, right, there's a slight difference there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, okay. וכל הדברים האלה, and all of these things that we talked about, הניסיון היומי יעיד עליהם. The day-to-day, our own day-to-day experience will
testify about them.
Testify to them. ממה שכבר פשוט הוא ורגיל ברוב המון בני האדם, אשר זה דרכם, כסה למו.
למו. Ways are folly. He's quoting Psalms.
This is right. So yeah. So this is already very widespread in the public.
Yeah.
ומשכיל על דבר, ימצא אמת לאמיתו, ודעת לנבון נקל. One who thinks in this matter will find the absolute truth, and knowledge will come readily to the understanding person. Right, so I mean, in a sense, this is all very logical and understandable. It's not that it's hard to understand this, it's just really hard to implement it.
Yeah.
Because it is hard to wake up in the morning when it's hot and when it's cold, and it's not.
And there's a lion on the way.
And there's a lion in the streets, or maybe it's just a small cat and just the shadow was big. I don't know.
Yeah.
The shadow of shadow.
Yeah, it's all the kitty's fault.
אוקיי, וכבר נתבאר עניין הזריזות, ביאור שיחשוב היותו מספיק להערת הלב, והחכם יחכם ויוסיף לקח. And we already talked and dwelled on zeal, and this should be enough for a person to really take this to heart and understand what it means. ואינך רואה, and we all see here, כי ראוי לזריזות להיות במדרגה אחר הזהירות. That it is correct for zeal to come after watchfulness. כי על הרוב, because in general, לא יהיה אדם זריז אם לא יהיה זהיר בתחילה. A person could not have motivation or zeal if they are not watchful at first. כי מי שלא ישים ליבו להיזהר במעשיו, because whoever doesn't pay attention and is careful with what he's doing, ולהתבונן בעבודה ומשפטיה, and take a careful look at his duties and mitzvot and the laws and its details, שזוהי מידת הזהירות, which is the level of watchfulness, כמו שכתבתי, like I wrote, קשה שילבש אהבה וחמדה אליה ויזדרז בתשוקה לפני בוראו. It is very hard, it is going to be very hard for this person to clothe himself in love and desire and quickness of
desire, chukha.
Chukha, and be quick and be passionate to do the work of his creator. כי הנה הוא עודנו תובע בתאוות הגופניות ורץ מרוצת הרגלו המרחיקו מכל זה. Because if he's not watchful, then it means that he's still sunken in the lusts, the bodily lusts, and he's just doing what is the habits that he's used to doing that are keeping him away from all of this, from all these good attributes. אחר שכבר פקח עיניו לראות מעשיו ולהיזהר בהם. But after he opened his eyes to see his actions and be careful with them, וחשב חשבון המצוות והעבירות, and he thought about, okay, if I do this good thing, what will happen? If I do this bad thing, what will happen? כאשר זכרנו, like we mentioned. נקל הוא שלו שיסור מן הרע וישתוקק על הטוב ויזרז בו. It'll be much easier for him to move away from bad and desire the good and be quick to do it. וזה פשוט, וזה פשוט. Is that how you say it in Ashkenazi?
That pashus. Yeah, pashut. The test. Yeah.
So
this is evident.
This is easy. This is evident.
Yeah. So do you know how I tell a tet from a tuf when I'm trying to spell things? I try to remember how my rabbi says it, and if he says it with a samech, then I know it's a saf.
Right. That's a good way to go about it.
Yeah. And Donnie's complaining, first of all, because he hates my hats for some reason. I don't know why. Second, because he claims you have an Israeli resh, which I don't hear. You have an Israeli hay. You swallow all of your hays.
I swallow all of my hays?
Yeah.
How so?
Say zehirut.
Zehirut.
You deliberately said the hay this time.
When I read the books for Naphtali, the Hebrew books, definitely the Israeli, I feel like, there is the kind of like Israeli pronunciation of like that's more literary, and the hay is very pronounced. Like I think I know what you mean.
Like sometimes like kihinehu, you know you like kihineu.
So the Israeli R, I know the Israeli R, I think what he's saying is that it's just I just by default it's very hard to have an Israeli R. Like my wife like struggles with this. This is like the bane of her existence. So her R is just like she's like Spanish. It sounds like Spanish. She speaks Spanish as well. So it just reverts to Spanish. So it's kind of funny. It's very hard to do the R apparently.
And Donnie thinks we do Kiruv, which we don't. And he wants us to go to Midwesternary, which we won't. Whose fault is that, Donnie? Instead of going to Midwesternary, you could come to Los Angeles or to Texas, you know? Yeah. Who's betraying who, Donnie? Who's betraying who?
Bukid Bagad.
Yeah. Okay. It was nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you too.
Don't do anything I wouldn't do.
I will attempt not to.
I'm going to end the stream. Good night, people.
Good night.